Good afternoon to you, our dear esteemed viewers. Welcome back to this episode of the Youth Roundtable. Today we're discussing a very pertinent topic and conversation that oscillates around the conflict in Sudan, but also we're going to look at conflicts across the East African region and also extend to the Horn of Africa. At this point in time, we are, of course, witnessing a genocide, in quotes, in Sudan. The last 2 weeks has been deplorable, it has been despicable, and we cannot, of course, pay a blind eye to what is happening to our neighbor in Sudan. So today I am joined by a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us unpack the question around the conflict in Sudan and put perspective to it. But as we do so, it's also imperative that we look at the past to justify what is happening in the present, to also give us a way forward in the future. This is Civic Space TV, and this is the Youth Roundtable. I am joined by Mr. Ivan Masawi. Ivan Masawi hails from the FDC Youth League, but also is an aspiring MP Eastern Youth
I'm
MP.
no longer aspiring,
Eastern,
I'm a candidate.
yes, you're a candidate.
I'm not aspiring, I'm already a candidate. Those aspirations and being a candidate are two different things.
All right.
Yes.
Candidate vying for the position of Youth MP Eastern Region. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much, Drake, and our viewers. I want to appreciate you for joining us and joining Civic Space TV, but in specific to the community of the Youth Roundtable. We always appreciate hosting us here and joining us for pertinent issues in regards to the nation and Africa at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right next to Ivan, I'm joined by Miss Nawanyaga, Gloria. I hope I have that pronunciation right.
You got that right.
Miss Gloria is also a candidate for the race of Youth MP Central Region, but also a lawyer and founder of GILO Young Positives Foundation. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Drake. A good afternoon to our viewers. Just like I said, my name is Nawanyaga Gloria. A candidate vying for Youth MP Central Region, Kaskwali Kabavubuka. I'm also the founder of GILO, Young Positives Foundation, a foundation that has empowered, equipped, and educated young people, both living and affected with HIV, to improve on their livelihoods and well-being. I'm so much blessed to be here.
Thank you. Very happy to have you here. All right. Today's conversation is one that, in my opinion, I'm very passionate about conversations relating to governance, peace, and security. And what we're witnessing in Sudan, but in a broader context, what is happening in the continent. Yesterday, as I was in my bed, I was just thinking about the so-called independent Africa and what has come with the independence that we claim that we have as independent nations. But let's start the conversation, Ivan. I'm very much interested with, first of all, the historical perspective to inform this conflict, but also as we look at the historical perspective to inform this conflict. You are aware that geopolitically, Sudan is located in a location, it's located in the Sahel region, and you know the Sahel region at the moment is also on fire. You have Niger, you have Chad, you have Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, up from the Atlantic Ocean straight to the Red Sea. And that location alone is geopolitically very important for certain interests that we shall underscore. But before we go into all those nitty-gritties, a historical account is very important to inform what is happening today. Ivan.
Whenever they take it that I have a historical account, I always get worried. Because I think as the TV grows, we shall be having visual aids for our viewers. Because even when you give history, our biggest population that has even people maybe who have not heard of held a gun or seen people use. They just see people with guns, but they don't know the weight of a gun and the weight of a war. Apart from maybe those who are born, who are early 2000 going to school. I was in lower primary. Could say that maybe you heard of what was in northern Uganda. But Sudan, it is 68 years, I think, ever since independence.
Yes.
and he has had 57 of them under military leadership. Sudan has had 5 coups. Similar to Uganda, Sudan has never had a peaceful transition of power via an election. The first coup happened in 1958. They had another one just in the 60s. They had stability in the 70s. Then in the 80s, there were 3 coups to that brought its longest serving leader, that is Omar Bashir.
In 89.
1989. In 1991, he formed the NRCC to see that he regulates over what they call coup-proofing. How do you do coup-proofing? The Sudanese armed forces, he made sure that he engulfs them to become his personal force, not the forces of the country. As years went on, part of his team that came with found that the law in Sudan would really deprive him of engulfing himself in state power. Most of African leaders want the army to just be one of their tools, not the tool of the people they serve, but one of theirs. And that is how he forms the Janjaweed to go and help him with the Darfur Liberation Movement that was forming up in the Western Sudan. For the young people who have had the chance to reach Sudan, when you're in Khartoum, you can't imagine the development you see that in this very country, which is highly developed, is there are people again somewhere who sleep in tents, who sleep hungry, who have no safe water. Unlike other presidents in Africa, I think Omar Bashir was one of the most disastrous, because for him at one time, in that very Darfur region, which was, for example, like the Buganda of Uganda, where he had no support, he created the Janjaweed under Hemeti, who is now one of the lead of the RSF that failed in the transitional military government, that wiped out 3,000 villages for not supporting him. They dealt away with it.
And that gave birth to the Darfur genocide in
And
2003.
in 2004. But still, to him, he created the RSF as a force, the very way you see SFC, to see that it keeps him in power and it protects him from any attack for those who want to challenge him in power. Until it came to 2017-18, when he began losing power due to the protests by the civilians. The only foolery was that Hemeti felt he was a statesman and he had done too much under Bashir to ever allow Al-Fatah Mohammed Burhan from the Sudanese armed forces to be the de facto leader. So whatever is in Sudan, first is ego, but secondly is that they have failed to ever achieve a free military government. The most expensive thing in Sudanese history has been a civilian-led democratic government. It has been very costly. Even when they went for military agreements in 2019 to bring up a civilian government, they made sure the prime minister that came to represent the military just put a situation that made it impossible for a civilian ruler to administer Sudan. So the challenges in Sudan first come from the dictatorial syndrome of having one military ruler rule for so long. There are people in Uganda here who are more powerful than even a government official, but they are known in nowhere because they the breed of habits you groom, people who feel. Secondly, it is an issue that I think Africa we need to wake up and deal with, because as long as we have countries that have not identified who are their vision bearers, and we are having everybody think they are the gods, it starts and ends with them. I think most African countries, the way we are handling elections and transitions is still too expensive. Just Tanzania, the other day, the number of people arrested, beaten, dying. It shows the cost of handling elections is still expensive. You can't be still in this era holding elections at the costs of death, costs of of imprisonment. For Sudan, over 100,000 people have died just at the cost of a transition. And Bashir, who was so bad, is somewhere still alive, still enjoying his rights somewhere in a prison. But these ones who wanted freedom, freedom has killed people, right? So I think for Ugandan perspective, concluding is that we need to learn our lessons.
Okay.
Yes.
Just on that, we shall get, of course, two things that stand out for me in your submission. One, you mentioned a dictatorial syndrome and lack of identification of vision bearers. That is something we shall look at when we're looking at the way forward. And I think that is a fair assessment and a fair account. Gloria, now, when we are to deeply delve into one, my area of interest right now is the geopolitical location of Sudan. As I earlier on mentioned in my introduction, Masawi has given us a very robust historical account of the birth of the state of Sudan. Now we need to also understand the birth of the conflict in Sudan. He mentions the dictatorship that gives birth to the Janjaweed militia, which later on transitioned in 2013 to become the RSF, that is the Rapid Support Forces. But let's start with the geopolitical location. I mentioned that Sudan is bordered or is located in the Sahel region that cuts from the Atlantic Ocean straight to the Red Sea. Countries that are bordering Sudan, you have Egypt to the north, you have Libya to the west, you have the Red Sea that is just adjacent to the east. Then you have close to it, of course you have South Sudan, you have Eritrea, you have Ethiopia. But most importantly, among the major reasons that is giving birth to this conflict is the fact that this Janjaweed militia, which is now referred to as the Rapid Support Forces, have been in control of key locations such as Port of Sudan that has been very foundational in the exportation of gold, oil, copper, uranium, and other rare earths minerals. So from this simple background that I've given you to the geopolitical location of Sudan, how is this a very critical component to influence or inform the conflict in Sudan?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, before I even go to the geopolitical location of Sudan, I want to thank our government, the government of Uganda. One of the most important things any country can have is peace and security. Governance put aside, but peace and security. And I can tell you there is no country that can develop in anywhere where there is no peace and security.
But I think we should have this right. You know that there are two types of peace. There is negative peace and there's positive peace. But I'm cognizant of
I'm
the fact
talking
that
about the peace where
peace.
there is no war.
That's negative peace, where there's silence of the gun.
Thank you. Yeah. Where there are no major conflicts. I cannot say that conflicts, because conflicts can be major or minor. But I'm talking about where you cannot see guns everywhere, where you cannot see, coup d'etats, where you cannot see. And in Uganda, I can tell you, Uganda, we are also very actually in a specific location where most of our neighbors are actually in, apart from Kenya, Tanzania, maybe Rwanda, but you see the DRC, you see Sudan, some Somalia, Ethiopia. We are in a location where most of our neighbors are conflicting. But for our government to, put us in a position where the conflict does not really, come in our country or affect us, I really applaud the government for that. Now, going back to South Sudan, it is so sad. Sudan. It is so sad what is happening right now, that because of the selfish interests of some particular people, because of their ego, because of their lack of, love and vision for their countries, they are doing all this. Ideally, Sudan would have, Sudan would have been the most developed and rich countries in Africa, I can tell you. Just like we see DRC, with a lot of minerals, with a lot of gold, with a lot of oil, it would have been the most richest countries in Africa. But look at what is happening right now.
Now, it's just
because of the
it's on that premise that we have resources in African countries, And we cannot be stable because of these resources. And the same leaders, Masawi rightly put it, that we lack identification of vision bearers. And we risk the same mistake of, even when we as Gen Zs go ahead and topple governments, we shall still have a repeat of the same.
The problem is we have specific people in Africa who are very selfish, very lack of vision, lack of purpose, lack of love for their countries, lack of patriotism for their countries, which have end up having powers that hinder other people or the country at large to benefit from the minerals. Otherwise, if we had people who love their countries, trust me, Sudan right now would have been one of the, just like I said, richest countries. But we have people who are selfish. African leaders are very selfish, most of them. Most of these countries where you see these conflicts, most of these countries where you see minerals are not being benefited by the whole population, is because we have those specific people, individuals, who are very selfish at that kind of nature, and they have not really practiced patriotism at the core. Because what we need right now is we need African leaders who love their countries. First of all, starting from the people, because you cannot love the people and let war, break out in a country. You cannot love your people and make sure they're not economically developed. You cannot love your people and make sure that they're not living in peace and security. But we lack those leaders in Africa.
All right, thank you. Ivan, for a scholar of peace and security, there is a theory referred to as the relational theory, which gives birth to conflict. Context. The relational theory relates to identity. Oftentimes, conflict breaks out because of our identities. Identities on grounds of race, color, religion,
ethnicity,
tribe, all that is the relational theory. Because of our relations, oftentimes is a ground of conflict. And that notwithstanding is also a ground of conflict in Sudan. Let's get into the ethnic profile. Context again. In Sudan, before we saw the Darfur genocide that happened in 2003 that claimed a couple of lives, the reasons for, first of all, forming the Janjaweed militia was to counter the civil war that was happening in Sudan. In Sudan has predominantly two types of ethnic people. One, it has the Arab nomadic tribes, but also it has the non-Arab African Muslims. One thing in common
there is
between
no none. It is just a name. They are the Africans,
yes,
the black Africans.
Yes,
I
the
don't
black
know why
Africans.
you say African Muslim.
No, the issue is not religion. All of them are Muslim, but because they're black and they're Muslim. And
they were just converted.
Yes.
But they're also Arabs. When you go to Sudan,
they speak Arabic, and yes, they're Muslims. Now, the ground of that conflict is not because of religion, but because of the race, could be, or the color. And that is the ground for what we see, the ethnic division that is happening in Sudan. And what culminated into what they refer to as the Darfur genocide, where we saw a couple of people from the Fu, the Zagwa, that were massacred by the Arab tribes. Now, on that background, still what happened then in history is what is also informing the conflict today. Let us have an ethnic profile. How is it that our ethnicities in Africa is, particularly now in Sudan, is leading to very huge amounts of bloodshed, displacement, but also people, over 12 million people have been displaced. Ivan, ethnic profile and how our identities is leading or being a cause of conflict in our various countries in the continent.
Thank you very much, Drake. Before the coming of the white man, we were told there used to be wars between Bunyoro and Buganda fighting for Bugangais. I don't know if it is the white man who had told Bunyoro to attack Buganda. Where I come from in Bugisu, we were going up to Kenya. Even Mbale, where I seated today, was former Buked, was not Mbale, but there were wars that led to expansion of Mbale from Bududa and Manaf to up to where it is today. So, the identity crisis that has eaten us up as Africans, led by, we are human race, and every human race would like to expand and grow because that is what makes us human. is expansion and growth. But going back to the Sudanese question, because the FNST was associated with who controls mineral wealth, what is disturbing RSF and SAF is that Hemeti is even more richer than de facto leader, that is Burhan, in terms of network wealth, but control
of the critical locations.
Critical locations of gold and oil. Just 2 weeks ago, he took over El Fasher in Darfur, where they had sieged in that place for more than 500 days. That shows one is fighting to see that he has power, one is fighting to see he has control. There is one thing being in control of power and one thing having power. Whatever disturbs RSF to not allow their army from the agreement made in 2022 to see that the RSF becomes part of SAF is that in that agreement they wanted Hemiti to be the leader, and that was not what Burhan was accepting. Burhan wanted in 2 years' time the armies be integrated, because these are both Arab. There is no way you can say in Sudan there is an African called in the military power share. These are both Arab. One a rebel who came from the street, one who joined the army after school. There is no way you can actually bring a black man in the war which is in Sudan. You live calling them Simanya African Muslim. They are just black Africans like me, who are just yesterday told you an Islam, we have converted you. But they have ancestors who may have been traditional healers. So, coming back to your question, whatever has been our biggest challenge has not been FNST, but leaders using FNST as a tool to weaponize, to pass their interests. Similarly, even here in Uganda, we have had the leaders who have either bargained in FNST from the early 60s. When UPC was alleged to be an Anglican cohort, Obote used that to exploit DP, which was still also leaning on only Buganda and being Catholic. Because Obote had known the Anglican missionaries had gone very many areas like Ankole and Bugisu were pure Anglican, and he would leverage on external support despite Uganda being central and to administration and the Catholics being majority. He just went and had a bigger area with fewer people, but because he has bigger geographical mass in terms of administration, that it made it. So, whenever we have leaders wanting to exploit the identity question in order for them to achieve their selfish interests, the wars in Africa then reduced to religious, to tribe. But politicians are more of conmen. I don't want you to think that politicians are the most holy people. They never go to a seminary anywhere to recite. They are just like any conman anywhere fighting to con people to accept you and you achieve what you want to achieve. But to know a right conman and a wrong conman, it is the vision of the conman. Because you're a salesperson like anyone, you're selling yourself. I wake up to go to the young people to sell my ideas. It's not that I'm going there because I was born a politician or what. It is about selling ideas. Whenever you have people who don't know how to sell their ideas, whatever is in Sudan, and people misinterpret peace. There has been a season in Sudan under Bashir where there had cut off South Sudan. Darfur's question, they had defeated the Darfur Liberation Movement and looked as if there is peace. But even before that, the gun in Sudan was always to the civilians who are protesting a military rule. The gun was never that the civilians were fighting government. The gun in Sudan has been that the military rule has been fighting very hard never to see any civilian uprising or a democratic election win in Sudan. That they will never organize an election. When they promise to organize the election, they will get a war which will kill those who want the election very much and confuse them. I told you, Drake, that the cost of, you have seen the very habit now eat up West Africa. the very habit is coming to East Africa slowly, because one of the East African boys has been a win of it. Whenever we fail as African people, not only Uganda, to calibrate when not to play, because we always think we should always be playing, but life is to calculate when to play and when not to play.
Let me just hold you there. I'm interested now in the involvement of the army. Across the continent, we are seeing a wave of various military coups and the involvement of the army in our politics. Recently, we saw what happened in Tanzania. The army is involved now in the political process. Tanzania, that was once revered as a ground of democracy because of Julius Nyerere, who helped Uganda in our constitutional history as well, in liberating us from the rule of Idi Amin. Today is under the leadership of Her Excellency Samia Suluhu, a military personnel. And you saw what happened. We all paid witness the shutdown of the internet, the protests that were on the streets against the government. What we are seemingly seeing in post-independent Africa is a rise of militarism and governance, a form of militarism and governance that is against the interest of the people, but for the interest of the few. Someone said that in Africa, power is taken by the gun and sold by handshake. This statement was made as regards to what we're seeing in Sudan, that you see the army, for example, Hameti, who controls now very critical locations with oil, gold, minerals, takes power by the gun and sells it by handshake, which now, of course, brings in the role of other international actors. The accusations that UAE is greatly influencing the conflict in Sudan because it gets its gold from Sudan. So my interest right now is, one, the militarization of governance in the continent, but two, now the role of other international actors like UAE that are benefiting that are benefiting from the war economy. Ivan.
Drake, I will not speak much because Sudan has given birth to South Sudan, which is not different. The Riek Machar and SPLM war has also never gone silent. This is why I'm avoiding too much to use Sudan as a case study. Because even when you look at what happened in Libya, as a result of Gaddafi not planning past himself. He planned from Gaddafi and ended on Kano Muama. Whenever we have leaders who plan from Yoweri and end on Tibuhaburwa, there are certain military statements that rise. In Uganda, they have already reason. There is one military guy, when he's drunk, he knows he's very powerful. Yes? Yeah, it is normal. When he's drunk, he's very powerful. And it is not that he's stupid. He also knows it. That if there is no Museveni, he will have to wrestle with someone. Whether he takes your head, it is because we never planned for such scenarios. Our military men were not planned to leave a uniform as a Ugandan. They were planned to think that Uganda is surviving because they are the ones in the uniform. And we can't blame them. We blame the leaders who turned them to their servants than taking them that you're there to serve the people. It has been common. You've seen how Elwel was left being a CDF. You've seen Karika Ihura and group. Whatever is in Sudan, really, the only difference is Uganda is they are richer, they had more minerals, they had more things to fight for. Here in Uganda, we fight for votes. People can beat themselves because of elections. For Sudan, they were actually fighting maybe for wealth. But Uganda, I told you that in the whole issue of Sudan, we should pick lessons for the post-Museveni government. Whatever is in Sudan started with Bashir. Bashir did coup-proofing. And coup-proofing was that he had to establish the Janjaweed, which is now today the RS. Hemeti knows he's more powerful because he's a son to Bashir. He was next to Bashir. So he knows it is their thing. He knows no one else can come from the country and take away power from their group. And it is the very thing here that people feel their family is more powerful. So you coming from outside and grabbing them, who are you? We need to deal with who are you. Because sometimes you postponing a situation, you can avoid the responsibility of doing it now, but you will never avoid the consequences. Uganda should pick more interest in learning from where Sudan went wrong, because we don't want to discuss this as if when you go to University of Nairobi, I've been there, there are more South Sudanese and Sudanese in the College of Conflict Resolution, Leadership and Governance. Learning too many books. Actually, even the dean of the college is South Sudanese. But there are more conflicts in Sudan than anywhere else. But he's even the dean at University of Nairobi. Books and what they read a lot, but with what lessons did they learn on application that we? So it is not about the learning, it is the lessons that we can always pretend, but are we postponing just the situation, or we are dealing with it amicably, accepting solutions? So I told you the ethnic question, even in South Sudan, they have a similar issue. They use people use ethnicity as a way of you hate us, it is us. The military question in Africa can be best dealt with when we again restructure the role of our military for this current generation, because it is not about isolating them. We can accept that maybe someone to be a president should be a CDF, and we have it as a, but if we have our military that is now leveraging on, I'll take a coup, I will not accept, I'm loyal to this one, is the one who brought me, no one else. I will control this region, and it is where we need to get remedy for.
All right. Thank you. Gloria, Masawi has extensively said something, and my interest, when he was making his submissions, he says that he gave reference to the University of Nairobi, and something came into my mind. I remember someone told me that in times like this, intelligent minds face execution, and yet on the other hand, their silence is too loud. And I think that is why it's very imperative for us to have this conversation, because not very many young people in the continent, or even in Uganda, are paying so much interest in what is happening in Sudan. Yet, the lessons that we need to draw from Sudan are enormous. In Sudan, you have the RSF. In Uganda, we don't have the RSF, but we have other military groups that have more power as well. But also the army itself has been extensively armed, and they have been extensively overpowered. That's just one example. Yes, the ethnic profile in Sudan.
I can tell you in Somali's Sudan, when you read about it, they are the ones making roads, constructing hospitals, in NADS, in what has not been here. The army today, they are in schools, they are constructing hospitals, they construct roads, they construct stadiums. So you can't even blame some of this, because they see they give a lot. So we only need to know, should we surrender to them, or we should get a coexistence of understanding? Because Hemeti was doing everything for the country, whether even budgeting, because he was making the deals that were bringing the money.
Now, my interest at the moment is, first of all, drawing nexus with Sudan. We relate it back home with why exactly we as young people should pay keen attention to the conflict that is happening in Sudan, because we do not have to think it will not happen to us, because we are actually hanging on a thread. What is happening in Sudan? They were in so-called peace for 50-something years, and in 2019, Omar al-Bashir was actually overthrown by the RSF with the support from the citizens. Now, as Uganda, we could look at it, oh, this is far-fetched, but in reality, as young people in Uganda, we need to pay very much interest. Draw for us that nexus, and why it is very important for the young people, first of all, to get interested in this conflict, but also start thinking of ways we can avoid ourselves from being in the same situation.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to first start with his comment on elites at University of Nairobi. And I can tell you that not only at University of Nairobi, Africa is full of elites. But the problem is elites are avoiding politics.
Me, the ones I saw there are Sudanese, South Sudan and Sudanese.
Not only
they hate
Sudanese,
the school of
we have
leadership,
so many elites
governance,
who know a lot about governance, who know a lot about democracy, who know a lot about, relations, international relations. But where are they? What have they done to contribute to their countries, their different countries? Even here in Uganda, we have so many elites. And I don't know if you have heard some phrases from people saying that, but in Uganda, I don't think, there is this presidential candidate. I don't know if I should mention him. And they keep on saying, I don't think this man will, be able to take our country ahead because he's very too diplomatic. What is wrong with being diplomatic? At the end of the day, it's only diplomacy people who promote democracy. Now, going to the militarization.
But surely, should we, because we have still failed to understand what kind of democracy works for us as a continent. We are barely 100.
Do we even know what democracy is?
But the thing is, our continent is barely 100 years old. The independent Africa started getting independence. Most of the countries started getting independence in the 1950s. So do your math. We are barely 100 years old. So one could argue that the colonial legacy still has an impact in the conflict we're experiencing today. But should that then define where we want to go?
Are we even free from colonialism in the first place? You talked about the independence. Are we really independent as Africa? Yes. So I'm going to go back to democracy over diplomacy and militarization. In Africa, most of the countries in Africa are actually ruled by military governments. That is why we are seeing so many coup d'etats. That's why we're seeing so many conflicts. Because we have been, I don't know if it's kind of a mindset that even here in Uganda, why I was drawing an example from this gentleman who is being said that he's very diplomatic and he cannot rule, the country, is because we have such a mindset.
Was a military commander. He was a CDF. Wherever he's the only man I see is a diplomat because the rest are
definitely. That's what they are saying, that he's a diplomat.
He was a commander instead of
general. He's a soldier. He was in the military. He knows all the military tactics of running a country. But because our mindsets as Africans, in fact, some people even say that, but in Uganda, our president is very lenient, has given us freedom, we can do everything we want, blah, 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 blah. But is that really so? Is that really the fact? Is that really the fact?
Yeah, as long as you don't challenge his power, you have freedom. You challenge power, they'll crush you.
So my point is, if we really want a better Africa, elites have to come out of their comfort zone. And they should challenge. I know it is going to be very hard because it's books versus guns. Books versus guns. Ideologies. You get. And people with books know what is supposed to be done and what is right to be done. But military people, they also know what is supposed to be done. But because they think they have an extra hand or extra power, which is the gun, that is why they threaten or try to manipulate these people, the elites, that they cannot do anything. That's why I have so many South Sudanese in Nairobi who are studying governance, who are studying conflict resolution, but they cannot do anything. Because in their country, they have put it that even if you have books, even if you know what is right to be done, you cannot do anything, you're powerless. You get. And it has also made them to be very, comfortable. Oh, what can we do? And they have sat on their knowledge. They have sat on their power, which is really so sad. And it's barring us as Africans. I'm sure all of us here are elites. But what have we done to contribute to the injustices that are happening in our country?
Okay.
Some people are even afraid to talk about the injustices that are happening in our country. Because what if I talk and they come for me? What if, we have people who have guns, we have people who have these cars, what are the drones, they will come for me and my family. Yet you know that you're supposed to talk about these things, but you have decided to stay silent. And this silence is barring us, is killing us.
Okay.
They say, I'm sorry, but they say that if you see someone going through a conflict and you be like, oh, that's not me, at a certain point that thing is coming in your house. So it is high time right now to wake up. It is high time to wake up, even though it is books versus guns, and know that we can use our books, even if we don't have the guns, to say what is right, to advocate for what is right, to make the noise. Because we cannot go to the bush. We cannot. you know, but we can use our voices. I know a case scenario that happened in Tanzania recently. You know, when people went went on the streets, they striked and all that, and internet was shut down. They have all the power to do that. But let's not stop. Let's not stop making the noise. Until then, probably God will hear us one day.
All right.
Now, going back to South Sudan, Sudan, you talked about the militarization. And just like I've been saying, it is so sad that, you know, our Africa, the mindset is, we think about military government, we think about coup d'etats, we think we have these specific people who are very non-partisan, who think that they are supposed to own particular minerals, who are supposed to own particular wealth for a country, which is really so sad. And it's going to take me back to what I said earlier. We need Africans who love Africa. We need Africans who love their people. Because you cannot tell me that, actually, some people say that Sudan is developed, which is probably true, but there are still conflicts. And we can draw whatever is happening in Sudan, just like you said, that he has given a very good example of from, I don't want to talk about his name, but from Museveni to Tibuhaura, there is no post-preparedness of whatever. You understand?
And that's the question that
I think, those things, just like you said, those things that are happening there right now, probably there's a high chance that they're also going to come. But because we have decided to make ourselves blind, not to see, we are ignoring.
Okay.
And it is our responsibility, all of us, to look at these things, air them out. I don't know why young people nowadays are very reluctant on, you know, making sure that they know about the updates in Africa, making sure that they research about the different conflicts in Africa. I don't know if we have a lot of freedom that we don't care. And this is our future that we are talking about. In the next 40 years, our children are the ones going to be alive. Probably also be alive. But people who are 80 right now, people who are 70 right now, do you think they'll be there in the next 50 years? So young people in Africa should wake up. And know that we have to draw lessons from whatever is happening in Sudan, from whatever is happening in Tanzania, from whatever is happening in DRC. It can definitely happen in Uganda.
All right. Let's just quickly go for a break, because when we come back from the break, I am interested in us having the role of international community. We have some states, some nations that have a vested interest in what's happening in Sudan.
And it's not only UAE. We have the UN, we have the African Union. What have they really done?
And what have other African leaders said? Have we seen them condemning what's happening in Sudan? That's a question we'll come back and resolve. Otherwise, it's a very candid conversation here on Civic Space TV. My name is Douglas Onen. See you in a bit.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break. My name is Douglas Onen, and just before we went into the break, we were discussing the conflict in South Sudan, but also in a broader perspective, looking at conflicts in East Africa, but also at the continent level as a whole. And just before we went into the break, my sister Gloria was talking about, we had asked her in regard to what needs to be done during Nexus, to what lessons we can learn as Uganda, but also what we can do, how the elites ought to get involved in the democratic process or governance process in the continent. And she has ably given her submission. But Ivan, Right now, I'm interested in the role of the international community. One, the role to, first of all, fuel conflict in what's happening in Sudan. Two, the silence that the international community has. And three, my major interest. I am not going to refer to AU as international community because AU is home. What is AU doing? So let's start on the first ground, which is the negative impact that countries like United Arab Emirates are having in Sudan, what the role of Iran, Turkey, and Russia. All of them are pushing or have a hand in what's happening in this war. But then the second armpit of the question is looking at what is the UN doing? What are the superpowers like the US, France saying? And then lastly, what is our dear AU, African Union, doing?
Drake, I'm not a student of foreign studies, no diplomatic studies. I'm an engineer by profession. I only do politics because I feel it will catch up with me when I don't do it.
True.
The international community is the most overrated statement on planet Earth. But there has never existed the international community. It just be a stakeholder. A stakeholder like Russia sells guns to Emeti. A stakeholder like UAE wants to refineries for oil and oil products. America wants the gold. Most of the gold reaching Sudan, if it had the GPS, it ends up in USA. So, very many people have blamed me for not playing by their foolery, but I'm very happy that I'm a fool alone. But I never take that that someone feels so good for you when you're in war, you're dying, and they feel they are not coming to save you because they were selling you guns. Right? You sell me a gun, I shoot the other person, then you come and tell me, no, you used the gun badly. Why did you press the trigger? So, as Africa, we still have an issue of capacity building. We have not built our internal structures and systems to be functional enough to eliminate our own problems. We are very good at creating our own problems and accidents, but we are still very poor, very poor on how we manage our internal disaster that we cause ourselves. I've told you, how would you expect an American to come and fight two Sudanese Arabs who are once in the same army, one heading the other, who have worked together since actually 1980? One was legitimate, one was illegal until they were made legitimate in 2017, serving under one leader. And you think you've come by accident. You know, what will always attract you as the international community is what interests and stake do you have in that particular country. Because if you're in charge of its gold, you get worried that gold will stop coming, our economy will not balance, and so you will go there in a fallacy of you feel sympathy. Is why the first solution, even for Ugandans, that I pick as a Ugandan, is we should fight very much to reduce the magnitude of our own made Ugandan problems, our own selves, have local solutions tailored to our peace and conflict resolution, have local solutions tailored to our governance. The more continued we rely on Chinese will come with their second-hand things and duplicate things and solve for us our problems. Chinese now make 80% of Ugandan roads, and the roads break down within 5 to 7 years. So the Chinese will never go away from Uganda. Yet Ugandan universities are over 40, around 15 are teaching engineering. The graduates end up porters, buying borders, because they can never take away what they learned in school anywhere, because Chinese have captured that market and it is their business now. Because we fought a foreign remedy will cure our local challenges. So, my lesson is that the civilian advocates who are advocating for civilian rule in Sudan, despite that they have lost on very many agreements. Because like I told you, if you find a politician who is a conman, he may be as bad as bad. The word bad where it ends. They went signed an agreement in 2019, shook hands, showed people that this is the vice, I'm the chair, and within a few months, each was going for the other's throat. That is me in control, not you. So Sudan should solve its issue for one and for all. By first, the civilians should accept the sacrifice they have to pay to see that in all of this war, whoever wins, the advocates see for the first time they have a civilian-led government and build systems, institutions, not rely that everything should be military. Military teach people in school, military treat people in hospitals. The doctors who went to study medicine in Sudan should advocate that for the first time, Sudan should be shared between all Sudanese and not only two men. That is not going to be given to you on silver platter. It's a fight. So I urge them to continue fighting. Those who will die, but those who will reach victory will reach. Yeah. But the lesson we should learn from Africa, and I'm seeing it here in Uganda, when you see people import children to rallies, it's not by accident. People will learn all survival tricks of staying in power by beginning to look more desperate as time goes on. Because the more you overstay, the population also understands you. Whatever things you are doing, people begin to feel, okay, you've overbeen here, but there was no change. So you begin all desperate tricks, including you curtail this, you curtail this, which personally, me, I've never feared living under Mr. Museveni, but what I fear is that the cost of us surviving in the post-Museveni is going to be a very big effect to our generation, because it has cost us a lot of backlog in terms of the right leaders, in terms of the right situations, and in case of the environment we are heading into. Most people may see us thinking that, we hate Museveni or what. We are only seeing that if you see far, like any other Ugandan, we need to look at points that cause a guarantee that post-Museveni, how are we handling the situation? Is it going to be a disaster like what Gaddafi, Omar Bashir, and the others have left in neighboring countries? Or for the first time as Uganda, we are going to see situations where we amicably see that as a country, we sit down and there is a reconciliation, there is a inclusiveness, there is an issue to sort that let's carry the cross together. Because sometimes army men want to carry the cross alone. They feel for them they have more responsibility over anybody else. I have seen it even a lot with people who go to the army. Personally, when I was a kid, I wanted to join the army. But the only way I lost interest in the army then is that most of the army men who are retiring and coming back to our village were coming back poor. I think the army just began shining under Nyakairima, but previous army men were living a very broke life. So I wondered, why would someone serve their country and come back when they can't construct a permanent house? Until Somalia broke up, there was AMISOM troops. Is I think when the funding of our army increased, because there were now machineries for hire to neighboring countries, so they were making money. So, coming back to your question, Drake, as I conclude, I would call any young Ugandan person, we like Arsenal too much and Sunderland, but let's develop interest in picking lessons from our governance and neighboring scenarios. Because when that day comes, you leave a screen with an Arsenal striker scoring and you begin running because you never planned for the situation. You may want to look so international, but you should accept that the one truth that lies, that is true. You have been born and raised in Uganda. Do you have the guarantee that the Europeans will admit you in their country for safety? There are a lot of Sudanese even here in Chiwatule and in Tinda who are here on. But do you think they are happy they have left Khartoum in a mansion? They now sleep in Chiwatule here, Seta, where you find very many Sudanese now here in Uganda. Go to Arua itself. Too many of them the last time I was in Arua. Do you think they're happy with that situation? So as long as they fail to act when they still had the chance to act, to do things right when they still had the chance, that situation becomes unavoidable. So young people, we need to get interested in being the solution. And you never be a solution until when you speak about it. If we don't rise to begin criticizing people that we need to advocate for an inclusive Uganda that is free of boundaries, identity, but it is coherent of everybody to see that a Uganda that advocates for peace, a Uganda that advocates for security, men in uniform stay where uniform applies and live where uniform doesn't. A Uganda that upholds constitutionalism, rule of law. It is on our own. When we don't speak as an advocate for rule of law and constitutionalism, it is a matter of time. It catches up with you. Maybe you can be lucky and you die before that time. There are also those who will be like, they will die before things go wrong. But if you will be here alive, you will have to have had the consequence to pay.
Even if you die, your kids will be there. So how are you prepared for your kids' future?
I don't think a dead person thinks of kids. You're dead. So I never think you can die then have mercy on your kids. You're dead.
No, otherwise you wouldn't be working for your kids right now. Because
They
you have
die.
hope that you have children.
The day I will die, my daughter will be an orphan. I don't think I'll be thinking about her because I'll be dead.
It's okay.
I'll be dead. How do I think about her?
Let me get to you, Gloria.
Yeah.
As we edge towards the end of this conversation, the humanitarian crisis that is in Sudan at the moment is deplorable. Ivan has made a clarion call to all the young Ugandans to be interested in these issues that are happening, because even now, even though it's happening to our neighbor in Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, Libya, it can as well happen here. And if we don't pick interest to find ways to fix these issues before it actually happens, then it will inevitably happen and we shall have nowhere else to go. We have many Ugandans who, first of all, do not even have national IDs, do not have passports. The question is, can you as a young Ugandan even sustain yourself in exile or sustain yourself in refuge in another country? Life in either an IDP or in a camp outside of your country, it's deplorable. So my question is, I am interested in the humanitarian crisis that is in Sudan. Images from above are showing stains of blood. You imagine, images from above are showing pools of blood on the ground. So the situation in Sudan is actually, it is ugly, it is despicable, it is bad, it is tainted with what someone termed as a human slaughterhouse. So let us just unpack that question as we edge towards the end of the show.
Okay, so first of all, I feel sad that we have all these international bodies, but it is so surprising that what is happening in Gaza right now, it's very shouting compared to what is happening in Sudan. And yet the Sudan war has been here for, I don't know, almost decades. You understand? And now something that's just happened in Ukraine, Gaza, and all that, it is all everywhere, making noise.
But even that aside, what's happening in Congo?
Thank you. How many years has Congo suffered in these wars? But what is being portrayed out there? Everyone is silent about Africa. Even the African Union that's supposed to be putting the alarms out there to the world is silent. Then the question is really African Union for Africa? Is it? Or it's for just formality and there are other hidden agendas? Because you cannot tell me that you are an African Union for unity, because union stands for unity. And we have conflicts in Africa that have existed for over 30 years, 40 years, 20 years, and you are silent about these things. Are you even really an international body for peace? You know, even in Ethiopia, where there are headquarters, there are conflicts. That's why we have so many Ethiopians here. And are in the headquarters in Ethiopia? Aren't there conflicts? And yet it is claiming that it is the African Union For heaven's sake, African Union, where are you and what are you doing? And are you really for Africa or you have hidden agendas? Either way, even if we don't have you, still, I don't think there will be any impact because you're not doing anything.
But at least they have gone ahead and appointed President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni as the mediator of the conflict.
Appointing and nothing is done. It's like washing and putting in dust. Ever since they appointed him, what change have you seen so far?
It's a process. You know, it's a process before the peace talks.
How many years have these things existed? We don't need appointments of lack of a better, just for formality, just for appealing.
But just
you know,
Museveni, his understanding of conflict, but also his history as a guerrilla, informs that he's the right fit to actually mediate this process.
I'm not saying that he's not the right fit, and I'm not saying that he's not going to do something, but I'm saying what has he done so far and what is he doing? And we keep on saying that you said it yourself that he has experience in conflict and what. Let me tell you, this Museveni guy, just like you've been saying, young people that now we have young people in Uganda who don't even have passports, who have never even crossed borders to Kenya. This Museveni guy has never suffered in his life, I can tell you.
Oh, he did.
When? Wait, hear me out.
Anyway, let's have the conversation.
Hear me out.
Yeah.
By the time he came into power, he was already a government official. He was actually a minister. He was living a good life. By the time he went to the war, he sent his family to Sweden. Now you can imagine a person who can afford to send his family abroad. Is that person poor? Is that person living a bad life?
He was the second of command to Muwanga.
You can imagine. He
UNLF.
was already living a good life. You understand? And then he went into war because of his reasons that we probably...
He lost an election. He was the last... Yeah, he was the last.
President, and then he went into the...
No, but you see, the rationale behind that, Museveni, he went for that election knowing he's justified. In his own reasoning, if you read the history books, in his mind he knew that the governments will not change only until
he goes to
the bush. That was his mindset.
And then was that the best conflict resolution solution?
For him, it worked out.
But 40 years later, you are here.
Actually, not even 40 years. No, I'm talking about the peace of war. What he did back then is what I'm narrating. He went to the war. He bought the...
Let's come back to the conversation.
Yes, I'm coming. He bought the insecurity, and then he came out of the war portraying a hero image. I removed the war. I bought peace. Back then, you understand?
Yeah.
Of course, right now I cannot say that Uganda, we are in war. Of course, I understand that we have these other injustices that are happening, but we cannot relate ourselves to Ukraine. We cannot relate ourselves to Sudan. We cannot relate ourselves to South Sudan, DRC. That is why even the little peace that I have, I acknowledge. But it's not. I'm not saying that we entirely have peace. Okay. So appointing Museveni with such a background, to me, I'm not satisfied that there will be a conflict resolution for whatever is happening.
Way forward, what can we do as a continent, as young people, to see that we do not repeat now the same mistakes?
Before I even call upon young people, I want to call upon the international bodies. African Union, I've already said, are you really for Africa or you have hidden agendas? UN, it is surprising when you go on the UN website and all that, you are seeing nothing about Africans that are suffering, Africans that are dying, and you're busy seeing Gaza and whatever. And I'm not saying that it's bad to show them, but UN, are you also really for Africa, or you have forbidden us, you have forgotten about us? We need international bodies to do their role. We need them to step up and take their... Africa has been one of the most conflicting continents ever since. But we are seeing year in, year out, these conflicts are just increasing. What have you done right? And what have you done wrong? Why can't you sit down and settle this once and for all?
Just information. After 2020, 45% of the conflicts in the world is accounted in Africa.
Thank you. Thank you. And really?
Okay, now
is that really supposed to be like
way forward, young people, what can we do?
Way forward to young people? Just like I said earlier, it is high time to wake up. What is happening in Sudan, in South Sudan, it can definitely happen here in Uganda. Even though we claim that we have the peace, just like I said, we have the peace, we don't have the wars, but those things can still come back.
Okay.
You get, so we don't need to sit back and be in our comfort zone. Let's wake up. Let's talk about these injustices. Let's take a step to advocate for better governance, to advocate for democracy, to advocate for peace, not only in Uganda, but in the neighboring countries. But most importantly, let's engage and involve ourselves meaningfully in politics and governance, because there is nothing for us without us. It is our role to see the change we want to see. Otherwise, nothing will be done for us. It's time to step up, and that is why my slogan is, I am the change I want to see. Let's be the change we want to see, because it is my responsibility as a young person to contribute to the better Uganda that I want to see, to contribute to the better Africa that I want to see. And how I wish all young people have that kind of mentality, because it is our future that we are messing with if we don't talk about these things. It is our children, our grandchildren that we are messing around with if we don't step up to be the change that we want to see.
Thank you. Ivan, way forward as you conclude as well.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate my sister for the powerful closing remarks she gives young people. She did talk of General Museveni as a mediator. Personally, I love the ways he has mediated. He has mediated DRC, he mediated South Sudan, and Sudan Garang died in a chopper. He mediated Kenya in 2007. Very many Kenyans died under Raila and Kibaki. I just love the ways he mediates.
There is a cost.
There is no, actually in Uganda, I've never seen a man as wise as President Museveni. It's the only thing I respect about him. The man is very wise. Yeah. I love what he mediates. Because he mediates using very little energy, and the price is also very big for whatever he mediates. Is why DRC is peaceful, South Sudan is peaceful, Sudan is peaceful. Yeah, he's a very, and he was about to be a mediator in Tanzania. It was going to be very peaceful. Yes, I just love it. Somalia is very peaceful. So, coming back, as young people, we may want to avoid the responsibility of knowing what we should expect on our shoulders, but you could avoid it, but the consequences can easily catch up. You know, avoiding is just maybe in accounts they call what? Brought down or brought forward. Pushing it to tomorrow doesn't mean you just procrastinated maybe, but you don't mean you've avoided it. We need to rise up early, begin to look into African tailored conflict resolution mechanisms, African tailored change of identity mindset, and breaking that dark-skinned code of, for us, we are Islam, we are Christian, we can kill each other, of identity, of I'm a Munyankole, I can cane you. If you're Chagulanya and you want to enter into Ngam, I can cane you. Those things were seen here in these campaigns. They are very backward, they are very barbaric. I can use all the words, but still having a Munyankole who picks a stick that will cane Chagulanya if he wants to enter Ntungamo shows how backward we are. And you share it on the news and you see the Secretary General of the NRM coming around. Is very huge. He covers the camera and speaks nonsense. It makes you feel bad. So, but coming to the point is that coexistence, we cannot say that we disregard all the efforts of our armies, including General Museveni himself. There are areas he has won, and there are areas he has also massively scored poorly. But how best do we leverage on these efforts? We don't want to say that the people we are as children, our parents have had no efforts, our grandparents had no efforts. That is disrespectful. The only thing we are challenging is not all the efforts to be wasted. People are misinterpreting most of us that this generation, those who are conscious, they are abusive. Those who are non-conscious, they feel. We are not abusive in any kind. We are just seeing the risk of complete wastage is high. We don't want the efforts of the small peaceful, even Libya had a peaceful time under Gaddafi for more than 40 years when there was no war anywhere in Libya.
Yeah.
But when Gaddafi went up today, it is very difficult for someone in Libya to sleep without a gunshot. Because now everybody felt that the army wants power, the sun wants power, the oil dealers want power, the Russians want to still remain in business of guns, the Americans want the oil, the Saudi Arabians want to sell their guns. So the mess is big. And because the mess is big, it today requires the Libyans who are sleeping to take the consequences of their own country and look for their internal solutions. These are things I urge the young people of Uganda who are uncertain that it starts now. First, being conscious, voting the right leaders, positioning yourself right, being awake. There is nothing as good as in war as the war finding you awake. The only people who suffer in war are those who are found sleeping. It is just like a thief attacking your home and finds you sleeping. They will steal you more miserably than when he finds you awake trying to scare him around. He moves a curtain, you move a chair. Psychologically, there is as nothing as going to be costly as those Museveni's downfall will find sleeping. They will suffer. The Sudanese you see running over Kampala are those who are awake because they knew where they would go next. They had saved their bit of monies, what the some would afford a relative abroad. But those who are dying every day, we got CNN living, they have died. Because when you're found sleeping, you also join a war without knowing how you just join to be a casualty. Because even those who are found awake and are going to fight will know when to fight and not. For you, you're just a casualty, you're traded. They kill you to represent some communication. I don't think that is one reason why anybody was born, and those are the things we denounce not to happen to Uganda.
All right. Thank you very much, Ivan. Thank you very much, Gloria. Again, the clarion call that both of you make is something that Ugandan young citizens should adopt. But also I think a clarion call that many young citizens across the continent should adopt. We are a very young continent with a median age of right now 19. And us being young with the rate at which the conflicts are traversing the continent like wildfires is alarming, and it should be something that scares us as a young generation, because it's our future that is affected, and it's us who are going to be either the victims or individuals that will be absorbed in these military groups to perpetrate the violence. And we hope and pray that doesn't happen to our dear country Uganda, but also other countries across the continent. And to our fellow brothers and sisters in Sudan who are in the camps and those who have fled the nation, our prayers are with you, and we stand with you. This has been Civic Space TV.
Before you conclude, I want to encourage young people in Central Region, please vote Nawanyaga Gloria.
Of course.
My symbol is a clock because I believe it is time to create the change that we want to see. Nawanyaga Gloria for Central Region, Kasukari Kamu.
For me, I behave like Abraham Rose. Do you see me campaign? I will meet them.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Douglas Onen. This has been a very interesting conversation. See you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.